Are Canadians leaving their country and permanently settling in other nations? Many Canadians claim they're finding it difficult to afford property in light of the Bank of Canada's recent decision to increase its benchmark interest rate and the growing annual average home price. Some people have thus decided to go to nations where they'll pay less for housing and other necessities. Let's examine a case study done by CTV News. Hamilton, Ontario native Roland Cameron is one of them. On July the 10th, Cameron and his wife landed in Barbados to settle down. Before choosing Barbados, the home of Cameron's father's family, the couple had contemplated residing in other nations. The pair is looking for a reduced cost of living to stretch their money further, according to Cameron. One of the many people who wrote to ctvnews.ca considering leaving Canada due to the high cost of living was Cameron. Although statistics from Statistics Canada suggest that more people are entering than departing, every day Canadians like Cameron leave the nation permanently. According to statistics, one immigrant departs Canada every 20 minutes or so. The decision to leave Canada by Cameron and his wife was mostly influenced by high housing expenses, he claimed. Cameron's monthly mortgage payment for his 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom home in Ontario was roughly $5,500, he said. However, Cameron is paying little more than $3,000 a month to live in a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom house in St. Philip, Barbados. The home is around 2,300 square feet in size. It also includes a pool. Grocery staples like milk, bread, and eggs are more costly in Barbados than in Canada, according to Numbeo, an online database where individuals can contribute information about the cost of living in other nations. Despite this, the pair intends to find other methods to save money. Cameron anticipates paying roughly $250 per month in Barbados for services like electricity, water, and gas, as opposed to $593 per month in Hamilton. Like many Canadians who reached out, Cameron expressed his optimism that the change would improve his quality of life overall and provide him with more money to spend on leisure activities and eventually starting a family. Although Cameron and his wife have put off starting a family while living in Canada, they now want to do so after they've moved to Barbados. We see that we have better opportunities for us somewhere else compared to what Canada seems to be able to provide for us moving forward, he stated. Affordability has become a serious issue for many Canadians, and people are moving out of the country to other countries in Asia and Africa where there is a lower cost of living than Canada. In general, food and transportation costs in Cambodia are lower than those in Canada. A loaf of bread and a dozen eggs, for instance, are less expensive in the Asian nation. Additionally, according to Thurot, who visited Cambodia earlier this year, a supper at a budget restaurant might cost as little as $3 per person. The newest inflation figures from Statistics Canada showed that food costs in Canada have increased by 9.1% year over year. When looking at the nation as a whole, the annual inflation rate is at 2.8%. Even while this is lower than the 8.1% observed in June 2022, inflation rates remain over the Bank of Canada's 2% objective. A short trip in a tuk-tuk, a 3-wheeled motor vehicle, can cost as low as $1, while a lengthier trip in a cab can cost as much as $50, but cost can be negotiated, according to Thurot. However, he said that buying a new or used automobile is typically more expensive in Cambodia than it is in Canada. Internal migration is also rampant in Canada. Although Ontario claims to be a place to grow, many do not agree. In the past year, almost 50,000 individuals moved from Ontario to Alberta or Atlantic Canada. While the population of the province is by no means declining, analysts attribute the record number of individuals seeking greener pastures abroad to the rising cost of living, stagnating income, and low housing affordability. Ontario has never previously experienced such a significant exodus. The US financial crisis, the soaring home prices in some of Canada's greatest cities, and Canada's record high household debt levels all lend credence to the notion that a housing disaster is imminent in this country. According to The Sun's columnist Lorne Gunter, the Liberals are not concerned about Canadians losing their homes, but are focused on getting re-elected. There is a lack of accountability and transparency in the Canadian government. People are still voting for Trudeau despite the housing crisis. The housing problem could be solved by pausing immigration. The Bank of Canada is trying to fix a problem they caused and received a raise. Home prices may need to decline for the housing market to stabilize. Canadians who continue to support the Trudeau Liberal NDP government are to blame for the housing and mortgage crisis. Raising a family in Trudeau and Singers Canada is difficult. There is a desire for some to delay mortgage payments. The last time there was a housing affordability crisis, Justin Trudeau's father was Prime Minister and interest rates were high. Trudeau spends more on groceries than most Canadians earn in a month, Gunter added. We must be clear that Canada has certain risks of its own. The rise of less strictly regulated non-bank mortgage lenders and mortgage aggregators has made it conceivable for the risk of a disguised credit quality issue to continue to exist. The chance of a cyclical collapse brought on by rising interest rates or a potential shock to the unemployment rate, however, continues to pose the greatest threat to Canada's housing market. When compared to the 2008-2009 financial crisis in the United States, Canada has very few of the components that would cause a cyclical decline in housing to become a full-fledged crisis, indicating that a lack of affordability may be a permanent feature in Canada's main urban centres. Many young Canadians are negative about their chances of owning a home as they feel stuck. Growing unhappiness with the status of the property market is creating a political threat for the federal Liberals. Over the past 50 years, Canada has developed a reputation for accepting immigrants and appreciating multiculturalism. About 1/4 of Canadians are foreign-born, which is the greatest proportion in more than 150 years and among the highest percentages among industrialized Western countries. Although some Canadians have voiced worry about the growing burden on housing and social services, immigrants have assisted the nation in addressing its aging population and fostering economic development. After Donald Trump's policies dramatically restricted entry to the United States, Canada has recently become even more appealing as a destination for immigrants. But there is also a labour shortage in Canada, which is made worse by a lack of trained labour. Other issues with its immigration system include an increase in asylum requests, an increase in deportations, and labour abuses against temporary visa holders. However, many Canadians see the immigration crisis as an issue because people fear that the current economic situation in the country and the housing crisis could get worse when the flow of immigrants to the country is increased. But the government's stance on the housing crisis and immigration is exactly opposite that of the people, and many Canadians say this is insane. But is there a connection between the housing problem and the rise in immigration? Overall, the government and economists disagree, but advise caution and moderation. A major barrier to solving the housing issue is affordability. The average cost of a property in Canada, as reported by the Canadian Real Estate Association, increased 6.3% from July 2022 to $668,754 in July 2023. Many Canadians and newcomers alike could not afford this. In Ontario and British Columbia, where most immigrants opt to reside, the average cost of a home is even greater. Homes cost $856,269 and $966,181 in these provinces respectively. According to research by the Environomics Institute, published in October 2022, 15% of Canadians feel that immigrants are raising housing costs to an unacceptable level for ordinary Canadians. In contrast, research from the Royal Bank of Canada claims that housing scarcity is caused by more expensive residential construction costs. According to the research, the price index has climbed by 51% since the epidemic began in 2020. Prices are higher as a result of a lack of qualified labor and a lack of raw supplies, which in turn drives up expenses and higher input costs. The Canadian government agrees that a large immigrant population is essential to addressing the housing situation. By the end of 2025, Canada hopes to have admitted up to 500,000 new permanent residents annually. The goal of increasing immigration is the most ambitious in Canadian history. By the end of 2023, the nation also aims to welcome 465,000 additional permanent residents. According to a TD study published on July the 26th, Canada's population increased by 1.2 million during the previous 12 months. Both newcomers and Canadians prioritize housing as a top issue. Sean Fraser, Canada's Minister of Housing and Infrastructure, claims that restricting immigration is not the best way to increase housing stock and lower prices. Fraser recently told CBC that maintaining the nation's labour force growth is essential to resolving the situation. And that's it. What do you think about the crisis in Canada? Let us know in the comments. Also, subscribe to this channel for more videos. See you soon. Goodbye.